Dio vi benedica.
Actor Jonathan Roumie and director Dallas Jenkins were among the crowd at the Pope's general audience in Paul VI Hall. Roumie plays Jesus Christ in The Chosen, a multi-season TV series directed by Jenkins. When it was their turn to greet the Pope, Roumie asked Pope Francis to bless some rosaries. Then the actor assured him of his prayers.
Hablo mucho español, ruego siempre por usted.
Muchas gracias.
Hablo mucho español, ruego siempre por usted.
Jonathan Roumie stood quietly in St. Peter's Square, surrounded by thousands of people. Some were singing, some were praying, and Roumie stood still with his hands folded and his heart wide open. He had waited his whole life for this moment, to meet Pope Francis face to face. But he didn't expect what came next. The Pope smiled, reached out, and handed him a letter. A simple letter, but the weight of it brought Roumie to tears. What was in that letter? And why did it touch the man who plays Jesus so deeply?
But you are an actor who plays Jesus,
Right.
so you should speak for
So
the
I
entire
should be.
Catholic Church
Right,
now.
let me do
Much like
that.
meaningful to you and connected to you.
When you're going into a place like St. Peter's, you can't help but just be stupefied at the beauty of the artistry and the thought of how long it took to actually build this cathedral. And so you have to get past that to find those moments of personal connection. So for me, participating in the Mass is what makes it extremely personal for me. You kind of have to put blinders on and you have to just sort of find those things that have resonance. Like Pope St. John Paul II is buried in the
Seeking spiritual renewal and peace. With him was Dallas Jenkins, the creator of The Chosen. Together, they were invited to attend a special event called the General Audience, where people from around the world gathered to see and hear the Pope speak.
He's inside the altar, and many popes are buried inside there. And because he was a pope that I grew up with as a kid, seeing him on TV, hearing him preach, that then becomes the personal connection for me. He just meant a lot to me personally. And so that's when I come into a place like this, that's how I can connect on a personal level. I think it's made to really highlight how much of the culture at the time was centered around God in society and the efforts that they took to glorify God through the gifts that they were given. Let's show God the magnitude of our love for him and by building these magnificent monuments.
Right. So for me,
Roumie knew this day would be important, but he didn't expect what was coming. As the Pope looked out over the crowd, something shifted. His eyes met Roumie's. The crowd faded. The actor who plays Jesus was about to meet the man who leads the church. And in that sacred moment, he was literally wearing his palpitating heart on his sleeves.
I've come to see this, that there's strengths and weaknesses to it, because I believe that Protestants have gone too far in the opposite direction and become almost skeptical of art and skeptical of imagery, because they don't want to be idolatrous, and because they don't want to be so symbolic that you miss out on the truth of what's being said, that these relics feel like idols to some Protestants. And I've come to believe, well, we Protestants, I think, have missed out on some truly great opportunities to be artistic. And as an artist myself, I'm like, yeah, I do that. I create symbols sometimes in my work. I create metaphor. And I'm learning from the great artists of all time, Michelangelo.
The day was bright, but the air in St. Peter's Square felt thick with silence. Thousands stood still, watching. For Jonathan Roumie, it felt like the world had slowed down. Wearing a simple black suit and holding a set of rosary beads, he took slow steps toward Pope Francis. This wasn't a red carpet or a film set. There were no lights, no scripts, no retakes. As Roumie got closer, he could hear soft murmurs in different languages. Then, he stood face to face with the Pope.
Hablo mucho español, ruego siempre por usted.
Muchas
Todos los
gracias.
días. Todos los días.
A smile materialized on the Pope's face when Roumie told him of his role as Jesus in The Chosen.
Porque yo tengo el honor de interpretar el rol de Jesús en la serie televisiva The Chosen. So,
Que
it's,
realmente que lo encuentres se te haga feliz.
There was no grand ceremony, just warmth, a quiet kindness in the Pope's eyes. Someone whispered to Pope Francis who Roumie was. The Pope's face lit up, almost with a chuckle. He leaned in, eyes twinkling, clearly amused and curious. He made a light joke, one that gently teased Roumie for playing Jesus, perhaps even hinting at Judas too. Roumie smiled back, humbled and a little surprised that the Pope already knew about the Chosen.
Rosario es juego siempre con usted.
Muchas
Todos
gracias.
los días. Todos los días. Por favor, reza por mí porque yo tengo el honor de interpretar el rol de Jesús en la serie televisiva The Chosen.
Bueno, que lo imites, que lo encuentres, que te haga feliz.
Gracias.
He spoke to the Pope in Spanish, thanking him, asking for prayers. There was something so soft in his voice, full of reverence. Pope Francis reached out, not just with a blessing, but with something unexpected. He handed Jonathan a folded letter. No dramatic words, just a simple gesture. Roumie held it with both hands. It wasn't heavy in size, but it carried a weight he couldn't explain. He didn't open it right away. He just stood there, heart pounding, as if God had just whispered something personal into the moment.
Then the series director Dallas Jenkins introduced himself, and the Pope couldn't hold back his sense of humor.
It's Jesus?
Yes.
Judas.
Yes. No. But I am Protestant, but I am making a show for everyone who loves Jesus. So.
The Chosen is the largest crowd-funded media project of its kind, and it's also the first multi-season series about the life of Jesus.
Behind them, the crowd returned to life, but for Roumie, time stood still. He wasn't just an actor anymore. He was a man deeply moved, with a letter from the Pope pressed gently against his chest. Jonathan Roumie held the letter gently, almost afraid to unfold it. For a moment, he just stared at it. He could feel something sacred, something deep. When he finally opened it, his eyes scanned slowly over the words. It wasn't a long message. It was a blessing, a quiet note of encouragement from Pope Francis himself. He told Jonathan to continue living as an instrument of peace and faith, to imitate Christ not only in the stories he told, but in the life he lived. That was all it took.
He was.
They knew each other, let's just say.
Yeah. Would you say he was a Renaissance man?
I'd
I'd say so. So, but my point in bringing that up is like there was so much, like art really was an expression of worship, and I do believe that Protestants have overcorrected. But I also do see people who go into those places who do treat these pieces of art almost as holy. I got an opportunity to visit Peter's grave and to see fragments of his bones, which is cool. And as someone who is right now retelling the story of Peter to the world, it's meaningful to me. But they spoke of it as if this is like a truly holy.
Jonathan's breath caught in his throat. His eyes filled before he could stop them. The crowd around him blurred. His knees buckled slightly, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of grace. You could almost read the thoughts running through his heart. I'm not worthy. I'm just an actor, just a man. And yet, here he was being called by the Holy Father to keep going, to carry something bigger than a role.
And that they protected it as a sacred place, and you kept distance from it because it was holy and sacred. And churches were built on it because it was so sacred and holy. And I'm like, well, why is that sacred and holy?
Yeah.
Like Peter, that's not really Peter. That's just those are bones, and Peter's alive. He's in heaven. Like, well, why is this spot holy and sacred any more than any other spot where I'm praying to God? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's a big question, and that there are theologians that I'm sure have much better, deeper answers than I can ever give.
But you are an actor who plays Jesus,
Right.
so you should speak for
So
the entire.
I should.
It wasn't about fame anymore. It wasn't about the chosen. It was about a life surrendered. The kind of moment that brings everything full circle, from nights of praying alone in a tiny apartment to this sacred space in the Vatican, letter in hand, heart wide open. A simple piece of paper had spoken louder than any award ever could. It said, "You are walking the right road. Keep going."
Right.
Right now.
Let me do
Much
that.
like I can speak for the entire evangelical population.
Let me do that just before we go to meet the Pope. Speak on behalf of the world.
Well, I'm going
Why
to share all this stuff with the
Catholic
Pope. I'm going to be like, listen, Pope, I just don't understand why his bones, and I'm sure we'll have a long 30-minute conversation about
I
it.
just got a text we've been disinvited, so that's...
No, I get it. You can't speak for everybody, but it does. That's
I think
connected to what I'm saying about some of these places that are treated as though they're holy.
I think as a Catholic, it is holy. I think the bones of Peter, I haven't seen them yet. I think they are holy because they were in him. They were in a man. They were part of a man that lived on the earth and did phenomenal...
After that moment in St. Peter's Square, Jonathan didn't just walk away and move on. He stayed. He wandered through Rome, but not like a tourist. His steps were slow, thoughtful. Every old street, every stone church, every candlelit chapel felt like it was whispering something new to him. The letter from the Pope wasn't just in his pocket. It was in his chest now, like a compass.
And was essentially given the keys to the church, to start the church. And I think it's deference, it's reverence, and there's just a kind of a cultural respect, a spiritual respect for our spiritual ancestors. You know, it's like going to a graveyard and saying, well, you know, like, why don't I just kick over a gravestone? It's just a piece of stone. Let me just run around on the graves.
Well, I wasn't spitting on Peter's gravesite or anything.
Not spitting, but you know.
No, but
I'm saying it's like it'd be the same thing. It's like, well, why have any kind of respect or honor for anybody in a grave?
One afternoon, he climbed the Scala Sancta, the holy stairs said to have been walked by Jesus during his trial. On his knees, one step at a time, Jonathan prayed. Not with fancy words, but from the gut. Gratitude, humility, a deep desire to be better, not just as an actor, but as a man of God.
And you even got to visit the Vatican and Pope Francis. How has that impacted you personally and in your faith walk?
Oh, that was pretty trippy. You know, the last time I met him was 2 years ago, and it was my second time meeting him. The first time, I'm pretty certain he had no idea who I was. And then the second time he says, "Ah, Jesus." I'm like, only on television. So he's got a really good sense of humor. He's very funny, he's charming, and he's a man after Christ's own heart.
In quiet corners of basilicas, he lit candles. He went to confession. He received the Eucharist. And in each of those sacred moments, the Pope's letter echoed in his heart again and again. Imitate Christ.
Right? They're not alive anymore, but they were, and what they stood for and what they did in their lives and who they were and what they mean to you deserves reverence.
you bring up the example of a gravesite. Evangelicals actually, by nature, are less observant of grave sites. It's just less of a, like there's a sense of like, let's go visit the gravesite, you know, occasionally.
But now we want to build something, so let's get the bulldozers in here and just put down.
Well, maybe not that far, but there is kind of like a, it's not as big of a deal to us.
Yeah.
And we would never ascribe holiness to it, like some sort of spiritual holiness to it. And so I don't ascribe spiritual holiness to a lot of these locations.
Later, in interviews, Roumie would try to explain what happened, but words will always fall short.
Here's you and the Pope, by the way. I mean,
just chilling, you know.
You told him that you were playing Jesus?
I did. I met him in his Wednesday morning audience. So I said, I would love your prayers. I'm playing Jesus for a TV show that's actually been seen all over the world, and I could choose all the prayer I can get. And so he said, may you seek him, may you find him, and may he make you happy. Wow. That's a blessing, I think.
Yeah.
He said the trip changed something inside him. It gave him a new lens, not just for how to play Jesus, but how to live for him. He realized that telling the story wasn't enough. He wanted to live it. Not perfectly, not proudly, but honestly. The kind of honesty that comes when a man sees himself clearly and chooses to follow anyway. And so, the actor who once asked God for just one more chance walked out of Rome differently. He arrived as someone who played Jesus on screen, but left carrying him in his bones.
Sorry. I'm a TV actor in the United States, and I play Jesus in a TV show called The Chosen. Yeah, and now it's being released worldwide. And there's over 200 million episodes that have been watched in the series. Because I'm playing Jesus, I think. Yeah, and because I love the Pope. And this was a huge honor to be able to be here.
It didn't take long for the world to notice. Soon after his meeting with Pope Francis, Jonathan Roumie shared a simple photo on Instagram. His eyes still red from tears, the Pope's letter tucked gently in his hand. That one post opened a floodgate. Thousands of comments came pouring in, some from Catholics, some from Protestants, even people from other faiths. They weren't talking about TV or celebrities. They were talking about reverence, about something holy. Headlines followed. News outlets picked up the story, calling it everything from a surreal meeting to a divine moment.
Pope Francis met with the actor who plays Jesus in the hit series The Chosen last week. The Chosen is the first ever multi-season series chronicling the life of Jesus Christ. It has taken the internet by storm with dramatic portrayals of the Gospels. The #1 crowdfunded media project in history, raising more than $10 million, is a series that is free to all viewers through its app and on other platforms. The Chosen is streamed in countries across the globe and has been translated into more than 50 languages. The actor who plays Jesus, Jonathan Roumie, spoke with EWTN on what his experience meeting the Pope was like.
I basically thanked him and told him I was praying for him and his papacy, and that I also asked him to pray for me because I was playing Jesus.
But the reactions weren't just hype, they were real hope. It was like watching a bridge being built between worlds that often stand apart. Here was a Catholic Pope blessing a Protestant-created series and affirming the man who brought Jesus to life in the most human way.
All right, apparently I'm meeting the Pope in just a little bit. I get to sit in this special section in the front. Jonathan is currently in the bathroom, and this is the General Assembly. So this is really fascinating. For me, as a Protestant, I don't have a whole lot of passion for something like this, but it's certainly an amazing opportunity, and it represents the growth of this show around the world. When we were in line, people from all over the world were recognizing us and thanking us for the show, and you're a big part.
Dallas Jenkins, the creator of The Chosen, later reflected on the moment with quiet awe.
I don't have a whole lot of passion for something like this, but it's certainly an amazing opportunity, and it represents the growth of this show around the world. When we were in line, people from all over the world were recognizing us and thanking us for the show, and you're a big part of that. So the opportunity for other faith traditions to experience the show is not something that I necessarily planned for, but it's I didn't think I'd become, have an opportunity here to meet the Pope and to get to experience this amazing city, Rome. But it's certainly quite an honor and something that represents just how far the Chosen.
And that's what this meeting did. It pulled down invisible walls. It reminded people across oceans and across beliefs that when something is centered on Christ, even the highest earthly authorities will recognize it. This wasn't just another celebrity meets the Pope story. This was a spiritual endorsement, not just for Roumie, but for the mission of The Chosen. Millions felt it, and for many, it was confirmation that the series was more than storytelling. It was anointed.
Show, and his eyes got big, and he said, "Oh," and he said a few things, including like, may you invite him in to your life. I assume may you find him, and may it make you very happy. So I took that as good a benediction as any to keep doing what I'm doing.
Jonathan Roumie says it was a childhood dream of his to meet a pope, and he feels that this meeting was God's gift to him.
Jonathan Roumie's path has never been polished. It wasn't fame or fortune that got him to Rome. It was faith. For years, he prayed through rejection, held on to hope through hard seasons, and said yes to a role that would change everything. But no acting school could have prepared him for what happened in those few seconds with Pope Francis.
rosario es...
Sí.
Hablo mucho español, juego siempre con usted.
Muchas
Todos
gracias.
los días. Todos los días. Por favor, reza por mí porque yo tengo el honor de interpretar el rol de Jesús en la serie televisiva The Chosen.
Bueno, que
So,
lo imite.
The letter he received wasn't a trophy. It was a spiritual passing of the baton, a wordless confirmation that his calling mattered, that telling the story of Jesus wasn't just allowed, it was blessed. Moments like that are rare. When faith, art, and divine authority meet, something powerful happens. It's not loud nor flashy, but it changes people. Jonathan didn't walk away from that meeting the same. He was no longer just portraying the Savior. He was carrying a little more of him. And for anyone watching, anyone wondering if their own work, dreams, or devotion matters, it was proof that yes, heaven notices. And sometimes, so does the Pope.
I never expected to get to meet, the Pope, Pope Francis, the second time. We're praying for Pope Francis. I hope he heals soon. And so the fact that as a kid, I had always wanted to meet the Pope because Pope John Paul II was the guy that I grew up with as Pope as a kid, and he just seemed like, the epitome of what a leader of the faith should be, of what, a representative of Jesus could look like on earth. And
now ask yourself, what would it mean if someone you deeply respected looked at your life, your work, your faith, and simply said, keep going, God is with you? And as we leave this story, hold on to this image. Jonathan Roumie, kneeling in Rome, letter pressed to his heart, whispering thanks through tears. A moment between heaven and earth. Maybe you've had a moment like that. Maybe you're still waiting for it. Kindly share in the comments. Has someone ever spoken grace over your path?